The Indian Army today took a dig at the United States by sharing an old newspaper clip from 1971 showing how the country has supported Pakistan for decades. The post comes a day after President Donald Trump threatened India over its purchase of Russian oil, saying that he will substantially raise tariffs on goods from India. The clip, shared by the Eastern Command of the Indian Army, dated back to August 5th, 1971, and it showed how the U.S. was supplying arms to Pakistan for decades in the buildup for the 1971 war. This day, that year, buildup of war, August 5th, 1971, the Army captioned the post. The Philippines President Ferdinand Romualdez Marcos Jr. is in India for a 5-day state visit to India aimed at further strengthening the India-Philippines relationship. This is according to the Ministry of External Affairs. Now, President Marcos has met Prime Minister Narendra Modi today, and the discussions are expected to focus on defense, maritime security, and trade cooperation. The president has shown interest in acquiring additional defense equipment from India. Do note that in April, India delivered the second batch of BrahMos missiles to the Philippines as part of a $375 million agreement signed in 2022 for 3 BrahMos missile batteries. Now, the Philippines Air Force chief stated that the country is exploring further purchases of Indian defense systems due to their, and I quote, quality and affordability. 2 more sets of the Indo-Russian BrahMos missiles are expected to arrive over the next few years. In the sharpest statement since U.S. President Donald Trump announced a 25% tariff on Indian goods from August 7th, along with an unspecified penalty for its defense and energy imports from Russia last week. Now, New Delhi has hit back, saying that the targeting of India is unjustified and unreasonable, and the country would take all necessary measures to safeguard its national interests and its economic security. The Ministry of External Affairs issued the strong statement late on Monday evening, soon after Trump warned that he would raise the tariff on India substantially. My colleague Vishnu Som brings all the details. Vishnu?
A sharp counter to what the U.S. president has had to say in terms of sanctions on India for the continued import of Russian oil over and above any tariffs which will be put in place by the United States. It's quite striking, because very rarely have we seen statements from the External Affairs Ministry which are as sharp as this, particularly against the United States. But given the fact that Donald Trump continues to pursue through social media his entire belief that India needs to be punished in a sense for what we continue to do with regard to the import of Russian oil, New Delhi has now said that there are clear double standards between what the United States, specifically Donald Trump, preaches in this case and what the United States actually does. They've also said that when it comes to the import of energy from Russia, Europe continues to do that, and they've come out with a document and statistics. I'm going to get into that in a moment, but what India says, and this is particularly significant, is that the targeting of India is unjustified and unreasonable. Like any major economy, India will take all measures to safeguard its national interests and economic security. But I think it's the specific points which point to the double standards of the United States which are relevant. Delhi points out that where the United States is concerned, it continues to import from Russia uranium hexafluoride for its nuclear industry, palladium for its EV industry, fertilizers as well as chemicals. And therefore the question is, then why are you targeting us? And they've also gone into a great deal of detail on how the European Union continues to have bilateral trade with Russia despite the Ukraine war. With statistics in 2024, there was bilateral trade of 67.5 billion in goods with Russia from the European Union. Therefore, India, which has always had an autonomous foreign policy, wants to assert that, look, don't, target us unfairly. That's not correct. And I think India has made it clear that our policy of autonomy will remain primary to our foreign policy goals.
Thank you for that, Vishnu. Speaking of Russia, the Kremlin has said that nuclear weapons should be spoken about with care after U.S. President Donald Trump announced that he had ordered 2 American nuclear submarines to move to unspecified regions. Now, speaking to reporters on Monday, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said, and I quote, "Everyone should be very, very careful with nuclear rhetoric," adding that the U.S. submarines were already on active duty before Trump made those comments. Donald Trump's special envoy is expected in Moscow days before the U.S. president's deadline on Friday for Russia to make progress on ending the war in Ukraine or face increased U.S. sanctions. Trump said Steve Witkoff would visit Moscow on Wednesday or Thursday. When asked what message Witkoff would take to Russia and what Vladimir Putin could do to avoid new sanctions, the U.S. president answered, and I quote, "Yeah, get a deal where people stop getting killed." Let's listen in to what the Kremlin is saying.
Не исключаем возможность проведения такой встречи. Продолжается диалог. Соединенные Штаты продолжают свои усилия по посредничеству в поисках пути украинского урегулирования. Эти усилия очень важны, в том числе и в контексте идущего процесса прямых российско-украинских переговоров. Работа продолжается. Мы сохраняем нашу приверженность идее о том, что предпочтительным для нас, разумеется, является урегулирование украинской проблемы политико-дипломатическими средствами.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is reportedly pushing for full occupation of the Gaza Strip in a massive expansion of the country's military operations in the enclave. His move, according to Israeli media, comes as ceasefire talks with Hamas stall and Israel pushes for a comprehensive plan to end the conflict rather than piecemeal truces. Listen in to Netanyahu's latest reaction.
להמשיך לעמוד יחד, להילחם יחד, כדי להשיג את מטרות המלחמה שהצבנו, את כולן. את הכרעת האויב, שחרור חטופינו, והבטחה שעזה לא תהווה יותר איום על ישראל. בהמשך השבוע אני אכנס לקבינט כדי להנחות את צה"ל כיצד להשיג את שלוש המטרות הללו, כולן בלי יוצא מן הכלל.
New images of two severely malnourished hostages have horrified Israelis and added pressure on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to reach a ceasefire with Hamas, even as his government considers another expansion of the war, which has already destroyed much of Gaza and pushed it towards famine. Now, in the video released by the Islamic Jihad militant group, Ron Braslavsky says injuries in his foot prevent him from being able to stand. In another video released by Hamas, Eviatar David says he is digging his own grave and speaks of days without food. Listen in to what the father of Israeli hostage Ron Braslavsky had to say, followed by a report.
New videos of Israeli hostages held captive in Gaza are raising the pressure on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to reach a deal to end the war against Hamas. Gaza militants released a pair of videos over the weekend. They are two separate videos showing two men in difficult conditions. Both of the men appear emaciated and are begging for their lives. These videos have caused or have sent shockwaves across Israel. Israeli media have not stopped reporting about this for the past few days. Tens of thousands of people joined protests over the weekend, urging the government to reach a deal to bring them home. Their families, of course, are alarmed and begging the government. They say that time is running out to bring their loved ones back safely. Now, Netanyahu has condemned the videos. He calls it cruel Hamas propaganda, but he has not said what his next move will be. He plans on convening his cabinet in the coming days. They're discussing various options that could mean new efforts at reaching a ceasefire deal, but they are also considering the possibility of even harsher military action that would push any hopes of a ceasefire deal even further into the distance. In the meantime, we see the same humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Health officials continue to report every day new deaths.
A year on from the ouster of Sheikh Hasina and the bloody protests preceding it, Bangladesh is still reeling from that violence. Sheikh Hasina now faces trial for crimes against humanity as she is believed to be in India. But despite the bloodshed and lives lost, Bangladesh has continued to suffer as extremists and Islamic radicals are emboldened. The prospect of a better Bangladesh with a liberal democracy, political tolerance, and religious and communal harmony has remained a challenge, to say the least. And with no elected government in place yet, its future for the moment seems gloomy. Pakistan's Tehreek-e-Insaf Party has announced that it will hold nationwide protests on the second anniversary of the arrest of the party founder and former Prime Minister of the country, Imran Khan. Khan was arrested on August 5, 2023, from his residence in Lahore after being convicted by a court in a corruption case. He has been incarcerated since his arrest due to conviction in other cases and is currently being held at the Adiala jail in Rawalpindi. Brazil's Supreme Court has ordered the house arrest for former President Jair Bolsonaro on trial for allegedly leading a coup attempt after losing the 2022 election. Prosecutors accuse Bolsonaro of heading a criminal organization that plotted to overturn the election, including plans to kill President Luiz Inacio Lula da Silva and a Supreme Court justice. Now, Monday's order followed one from the top court last month that ordered Bolsonaro wear an electronic ankle monitor and imposed a curfew on his activities while the proceedings are underway. The latest decision keeps the far-right leader under ankle monitoring, allows only family members and lawyers to visit him, and seizes all mobile phones from his home in Rio de Janeiro. China has reiterated that its government alone holds the authority to identify and approve the successor of the Dalai Lama. China said the reincarnation or successor of the living Buddha and spiritual leader of Tibetan Buddhism, and I quote, is never decided by the Dalai Lama himself and must be identified within China and approved by the central government. Let's listen in.
从来不是由达赖喇嘛个人说了算，达赖喇嘛的转世必须坚持国内巡防、精品撤迁、中央政府批准的原则，遵循宗教仪轨和历史定制，按照国家的法律法规来办理。
A huge wildfire in Central California has threatened hundreds of homes with blazes churning through the brush-covered hillsides in Los Padres National Forest. At least 3 people were reported injured and more than 450 structures were under threat by the Gifford fire. The fire had scorched over 72,000 acres as of Monday evening, and by Monday night, the fire was considered only 5% contained. Authorities in Scotland cancelled trains, closed parks, and warned people to tie down backyard trampolines as a rare summer storm brought potentially destructive winds to northern Britain. The UK's meteorological office issued an amber wind warning in Scotland for Storm Floris, meaning there is a potential risk to lives and property, especially from large waves in coastal areas. The agency said wind gusts could reach 137 kilometers per hour, accompanied by heavy rain. The storm is hitting at the busiest time of the year for tourism as well, with hundreds of thousands of people flocking to Edinburgh Fringe and other arts festivals.